Welcome to a HoN Hero Tier List video. In this video series, I am going to give you all my thoughts and explanations about each hero in the game by putting them into separate categories and tiers within those categories. Now, because there are so many heroes in the game, rather than grouping them all into tiers within one large video, I will be focusing on their best or most preferred roles consisting of supports, carries, junglers, solo mid or 1v1 heroes, and solo 1v1 or offlane heroes, and making smaller segments. I will be starting with supports in this specific video, which will include both main and secondary supports, which will be a fairly good sized list, and we will go through all of them one by one until we have covered all of the support heroes. So before we begin, I am well aware that heroes can be played in a variety of ways and different roles. However, I will be placing each hero into what I believe is their absolute best role, before you all go writing in the comments that Glacious can be a mid hero and Vindicator can be played as a carry. With that being said, let's begin our hero tier list for the supports in HoN. So I have the heroes here at the top are going to be our support heroes, and we will go through them one by one. So we're going to start with Andromeda here as our first hero, and Andromeda is an S tier support hero for me. Now the reasons she is an S tier support hero: she is good at all stages of the game. She is a defensive and offensive support simultaneously. She can protect your carry or key hero with her swap. She has a great setup stun, enabling a lot of strong combos in HoN, as well as a damage amplifier with both her Aurora and her Dimensional Link. Just a fantastic support hero from top to bottom. There are very few situations where Andromeda is going to be a bad pick in HoN, so you can almost never go wrong with picking up an Andromeda. Just overall fantastic support hero. So that is the first one. Next will be Glacious. Glacious for me is another S tier hero. Glacious has a great skill set. He has both a mini stun that immobilizes and disables for a long period of time on a single target. He has an AoE slow. He's great in laning phase. He has a global mana aura for his team, and he has the option of in the mid and later stages of the game to be staffed by a teammate if he's not able to staff himself, which is an insanely powerful tool in the mid and late game, as I said. It's overall a fantastic laner and hero that scales as a support. So for me, he is an S tier hero. Next is going to be Voodoo Jester on the list. For me, Voodoo Jester has always been kind of a not quite as good as other support heroes. I'm going to put him in the B tier, because I don't think he's a bad support. Maybe I should explain the tiers by my standards before we get any further into the video. So for those of you that aren't sure how the tiers rank, the S tier is like the absolute best. These heroes are good all the time. You're almost always going to be safe to pick up these heroes. And as they go down the list, A, B, C, D, E, they slowly start to lack some things, or there are heroes that are above them in power level or what they bring to the table, until you get all the way down to the E tier, which is heroes that are just almost never good. They're just lackluster. They don't really do a whole lot. And then heroes anywhere from the C to A range are going to, or from the, I guess the S to A or S to B range are very powerful heroes that you can always consider picking up. C to E range are like heroes that if I was drafting for a tournament, I'm almost never contemplating in my mind to pick up for a competitive game. So anything in B, A, and S going upward would be something that myself as a drafter I would be considering picking in a competitive game. So Voodoo Jester for me is a B tier hero because there are a lot of ways to counter him. His stun throughout most of HoN's history, up until recently actually, was very slow and easy to avoid, hard to get good use of the bounces. As of right now, it is much stronger, so he's not too bad of a hero, but for me, he's still a B tier hero. Curses' main ability, which is what he brings to the table, And you can counter curse fairly easily with like heals. So any kind of heals in your team almost kind of negates the cursed ground effect. And the ultimate is physical damage, which you can run away from. It's not really the strongest support hero in the game, in my opinion, but he's still a fairly decent one. So I rank him in the B tier. Next is Accursed. Again, we have another S tier support hero here. Now, Accursed, unlike the first three heroes, this is going to be our first secondary support hero. And again, this is a main support and secondary support tier list, but Accursed, he could be a main support. He's most optimal in a position 4 or secondary support role, just so that he can get a little bit more items compared to other heroes like Andromeda and whatnot so far. His fire shield is so valuable as a tool to protect your carry or anyone in your team, being able to remove stuns and debuffs, but also scaling into the late game, removing things like Hellflowers and Sheepsticks. Very, very powerful. You do not have to buy an item to do that. He has that at his disposal at all times. That with being a constant healer with his, forgetting the name there, but the first skill, he's just very good at babysitting and being aggressive simultaneously on something like a long lane. And then if he's able to get items, he's a support that you never really want to focus. So you can't really ignore him because he's protecting his teammates from your disables. But if you try to go on him, he has this flame consumption, which could make you waste a lot of resources. So he's a very, very strong support hero. Thus, I place him in the S tier. Next is going to be a Luna. Luna, for me, is a very good hero. I would place her in the A tier list. I think she is very valuable as a hero, but to me, she's just slightly not quite at the level of the heroes in the S tier that I've already aforementioned. What she's great at is she is a very good counter pusher. She can split push waves with her power throws, even using her Emerald Red, which is her ultimate, to have the multiple power throws, just clean out waves, push lanes, be a disruptive, like, split pushing support who can also farm. So in my opinion, she's best played as more of a secondary support, but she can definitely main support. The only issue with her main supporting is she doesn't have a solid stun in comparison to other supports. She doesn't babysit very well in the sense that she doesn't have heals. She doesn't have a lot of things that some of other support heroes that are really good have. Thus, giving her some weaknesses that I would rank her in the A tier. And there was one other thing I was gonna say. Lost my train of thought there. But yeah, for me, Luna, she is a very good support hero, but I don't personally rank her in the S tier. I'm going to keep her in the A tier. So we'll have our first A tier support hero. Next is going to be Devourer. I know this could be controversial for a lot of people. Most people think that Devourer is either like a mid hero. I typically tend to think of Devourer as a roaming style of hero, which for me places him in a position 4 role, which is the secondary support or roaming role. He doesn't really need any items to be effective. Thus, I feel like he makes for a great support hero. He can just kind of roam around the map, set up ganks from Fog of War with his hook, be a nuisance. And it doesn't really matter how many times you die as a Devourer. You're always going to have some kind of use being able to disposition your enemy or even save an ally with a hook that's in trouble. So I feel like he is, for me, not quite as good as the A or S tier heroes. I'm going to place him in the B tier. There's a lot of counterplay with a Devourer. You can play around him a lot, but a very good Devourer is very scary to play against. So I'm going to give him a fairly decent rank here in the B tier as a secondary support. We don't see him a whole lot in competitive, but there are situations where Devourer can be quite effective. So I'll place him in the B tier there. Next is going to be Empath. I'm also going to place Empath in the B tier. So, for me personally, I actually think this hero is really good but underplayed. I can't quite put her in the A or S tier category because she's kind of more of a situational support. She's really good when she can disrupt pathing with her wall. There are select carries that she pairs very well with, heroes that she can buff up, heroes that are naturally tanky carries that can benefit from her attack damage buff. Some squishier like agility carries can't always take good advantage of empath, and even like intelligence carries, because when you have an empath inside your carry, you're basically playing with one hero down in terms of an HP bar and whatnot. So she is kind of, in my opinion, more of like a niche style of support, where she can be like a very good dual midder or tri-lane support hero, but as far as like a babysitter goes, she's okay. She's not terrible by all means, which is why I'm putting her in the B tier and not C or lower. If she was in C or lower, I would be kind of saying that she's not very good, but I really like Empath as a hero, so I'm going to put her in B. She just doesn't quite make the cut for me to be placed higher. Next is going to be Nymphora. Nymphora for me is an S tier support hero. This hero is, for me, great at all stages of the game. It's a fairly good laner. You can tri-lane with this hero. You can 2v2. It has great sustain with the volatile pod. You can choose whether you need points in mana or not based on you and your lane partner, which you don't always need. Sometimes 1 or 2 is plenty. Sometimes you don't even really need it. She's got a stun, a heal, free mana, and her ultimate is amazing. Being able to teleport around the map with your teammates and pick off enemies is great at all stages of the game. This is a support hero that you always have to keep in the back of your mind that you're playing against. She's very disruptive and can be very effective when your opponents split up and farm around the map. So she's great at laning. She's great at all stages of the game. She can even farm with her pod and her stun. She can constantly mana herself to keep herself basically like a walking fountain for her team, if you can get the right items for that. And that's just a very valuable asset to have on your team in almost any situation. So whether you're a push lineup, whether you're a ganking lineup, Nymphora is great in both of those styles of lineups. So she's just very, very valuable, thus giving her an S tier rank. Next is going to be Vindicator. So for me, and again, I said in my intro that I know you can play Vindicator as a carry. I still think Vindicator is a support at his core. I think support is his best role. And if I have to rank him based on other support heroes and how he performs, I would have to honestly put him in the D category. This hero is not very good in laning phase. He doesn't deal a lot of damage. He doesn't have great disables. It's mainly his ultimate that makes him a useful or good hero, which is able to globally silence everyone, for a couple of seconds. So he's very easy to take advantage of in laning phase, so he's not good early game. He's kind of okay, but not great in mid game. It's more so in the mid to late game stages. The longer the games go, the more he gets to become disruptive. He's a very disruptive support hero. He's not really a good babysitter. He's more of like a teamfight disruptor. So because he has such a niche in the game, it's almost like you have to be against kind of like a combo lineup from the enemy team. Something like a Flux Engineer just comes to mind. But that's when he can become more of a B and higher tier hero. But sadly, that is only going to be sometimes, not always. So for me, this hero is low on the list. I'm going to put him at the D tier. Next is going to be Icor. Icor I'm going to put in the B tier. And the reason for that is because he is a very strong laner. Arguably one of the strongest laning supports. He is a strength support hero with some range. Not too much range, but some range. And he's very hard to lane against. He's able to buff up his entire team with his ultimate, and thus making him a great team fighter at all stages of the game. He does kind of taper off toward the late game, so he's kind of more of a mid to early game support hero. But he's also able to like debuff large debuffs and stuff, similar to like an Accursed, but not quite as good as an Accursed. So for me, he ranks as a B tier support hero. Kind of a niche hero, but definitely stronger than a Vindicator, to put a comparison there for you guys. Okay, next is going to be Moira. Moira for me is an A tier support hero. Back in the day when this hero was first introduced, and I played a lot of competitive against Moira, this hero was an S tier hero by far. This hero was probably either the best hero in the game for a while, or one of like the top 5 best heroes in the game. But that's been a long time from now. And I think Moira still remains a very good support hero. I think she's an A tier support hero. What she lacks from the other S tier support heroes, she's not really a great laner. She doesn't have great harassment. Her spells can be avoided. There is a fair amount of counterplay to her, but her ultimate is amazing, and she has to be at least an A tier support hero, because at all stages of the game she can make big plays, she can save teammates with her Arcane Vortex, she can stun up to 4 people in team fights, and she can completely negate one hero in a team fight with Mana Sunder as well, until they get items to counter that. Just a fantastic support hero, very flexible, can tri-lane, can dual lane, but doesn't do it as well as some of the stronger S tier support heroes. Next is going to be Blitz. Blitz for me, I really like Blitz as a hero, but I'm going to put him in the B tier. Now, the reason that I think Blitz is a B tier support hero, he's kind of like Empath for me. I really like the hero, but I can't rank him A or S. Blitz doesn't have a lot of attack range. I'm going to go through the weaknesses. He doesn't have a lot of attack range. He doesn't have a lot of burst and lane presence in the early laning stages. He starts to take off in the early post laning phase, mid game stages of the game, where he can run around, deal lots of damage with his ultimate and his stun. He's more of like a ganking support hero, so he's not really a good babysitter. He's more of like a position 4 support that can't really farm. He's like an aggressive support, so he is almost kind of one-dimensional in the sense that he kind of has to be active and set up kills. He's not really a good hero for sitting back and being passive, so kind of has one play style. He has a stun that's disjointable. You can purge off the ultimate with like Geobane and stuff, but it is a very powerful ultimate. It can go through Shrunken Heads and whatnot. I really like Blitz, but again, I think he's a B tier support. I could maybe put him in A tier, but I'm gonna keep him in B tier. I think he just lacks a few things to be considered an A or higher tier hero. Next is going to be Artesia. Artesia for me is a D tier hero. So it's not so much necessarily that Artesia is a really bad hero, but I feel like the hero isn't really a very strong main support hero, because in order to constantly heal people, you need a lot of farm, you need a lot of items to be able to sustain all of your heals. You can definitely output a lot of damage with your ultimate and your missiles, but typically you would rather be in the healing mode to babysit your carry. I think this hero is best played as a position 4, where she can get a little bit of farm, as opposed to a main support, but she is kind of awkward to farm with. Like I said, you kind of need a lot of mana to farm your missiles. You need like 2 or 3 missiles to farm creep waves. She's just kind of like an awkward support hero, at least for me. But definitely one that can deal a lot of damage or heal a lot of health to teammates in a very prolonged team fight. So it's definitely not like a bad hero by all means. But again, by my criteria, if I was drafting, I almost never really think about picking up this hero. So thus I have to give her kind of a lower rank compared to some of the other ones. Next is going to be Riftwalker. Oh, sorry. I had my notes a little wrong. I gave her a C rank. So Artesia is definitely not. I was actually looking. I had to do a double take. I don't rank her the same rank as Vindicator. She's definitely a better hero than Vindicator, but I can't put her in the upper half. I have to keep her more toward the middle ground as a support. Next is going to be Riftwalker, who for me is also a C tier hero. Riftwalker, I think's best role is as a secondary support, so position 4, where he's able to be like a follow-up to a setup stun on a dual lane somewhere, something like an Electrician or a Cthulhu comes to mind, or a Magmus. But he doesn't really have a stun until his ultimate. He has a slow, but it doesn't do damage. All of his damage comes from his skill shots. You have to sit inside the slow, so if you're able to get away from that, then Riftwalker isn't very effective. This hero is kind of niche in the sense that his ultimate is a superior stun, so he's really good against channeling heroes. He's really good against locking down people with shrunken heads. But he's kind of like a niche hero. He needs people to bait for him to set up so he can group them all together. He's not a hero like in the A tier. These heroes are good almost in every situation. Riftwalker is a more situational hero that can be very effective sometimes, like a Vindicator, but more often than not, he's lackluster or doesn't do things better than some other heroes do. So thus I have to give him a C rank here. Next on the list is Rhapsody. Rhapsody I rank in the A tier. Throughout Rhapsody's history in HoN, she has always been a very staple support hero. She's great at babysitting. She's got a decent lockdown stun with the staccato, being able to do mini stuns. She's able to harass very effectively with that and her auto attacks. Excuse me, as well as she has the heal, which is the big reason she's a great support. She's able to heal allies. So she's great in push lineups. She's great in team fighting lineups. Similar to the Nymphora, but she just doesn't quite have that same presence. She's just a little bit short of the S tier for me. She has an amazing ultimate, but it can be countered as long as you're able to be aware of where the Rhapsody is and interrupt her ultimate. But with that being said, she has an amazing ultimate that can be game-changing if used correctly. So she is, for me, an A-tier support hero. I have very much liked playing Rhapsody throughout my HoN career, but for me, she just doesn't quite make the cut to be an S-tier support hero. Maybe if it was back several years ago, she probably would be an S-tier hero, but the game has evolved quite a lot, and for me, she's an A-tier support hero right now. Next is Kinesis. I would put Kinesis in the B tier list here because he's not really a great babysitting support. He's not a great position 5, but he is an excellent position 4, but he's somewhat situational based on the opposing side. He can become like an A or S tier hero when he's against heroes like Magmus and other high valuable primary ability heroes that he can really use the thought steal, where he can roam around and set up kills. He has a pretty solid ultimate for locking people down. But there are, I feel like, some heroes that are able to do what he does a little bit better. But he does have his strengths. He's very disruptive with the creep throws. He could like creep throw into jungle camps and whatnot, deny farm. This hero could definitely be considered an A tier hero by many people, but for me, I think sometimes he's just ineffective, and for me, that's why he's a B tier hero. But he definitely is a good hero. Thus, he's for sure in the upper half of the tier list. But for me, I can't label him too highly. Demented Shaman, I'm going to put in the C tier list here. So this is a support hero that I would say is probably a position 5, a babysitter with the heal. He's kind of niche in the sense that you want to combo him with something like a Cthulhu, a deadlift, I don't know, maybe like a Pandemonium or a Zephyr, or either somebody that can displace the enemy into the creep wave, or somebody that has minions like a Balfagor, those kinds of heroes. So he's kind of niche, That's when his healing wave becomes really good. You don't really pick this hero for the cape. The cape is just kind of what helps make him a defensive hero. You pick him to either be good against physical damage lineups because of his cloud, or you pick him because you want to pick a lane that stomps something like Cthulhu Font Demented comes to mind, throw the creeps, you heal bomb, does tons of damage. It's a really annoying laning phase hero. For me, I think this hero is a C rank hero. He's definitely not D or E, but I can't rank him in the upper 3 tiers because I feel like he's more niche, and I would almost always value picking something higher than him. But definitely not a bad hero by all means. Next is going to be Revenant. Revenant for me is a B tier hero, B tier support hero, and not really a good position 5 hero. This hero is pretty much position 4 secondary support. He can farm okay with mortification, so he can get items for himself. Not an A or S tier hero for me because he is kind of weak in the early game stages. Now, again, level 1, his Defile is pretty strong. He can be a pretty annoying hero to lane against, but kind of situational. He kind of starts to take off at level 8, where he can invis 2 people, so himself and somebody else, and then kind of run around the map and gank, but doesn't have like a solid stun or anything. Kind of lacks some stuff as a support, but definitely more of a disruptive ganking support hero. Definitely belongs in the upper half because he can take over games and be very disruptive with smoke ganks, forces enemies to buy dusts and rev wards, which drains their resources quite a bit. But yeah, he's kind of situational. Not very good against push lineups. Of course, you want to run around and pick people off. So kind of a niche, but definitely an upper tier hero. Next is going to be Monarch. Monarch for me is going to be an S tier support hero. I am under a strong belief that Monarch is probably, if not one of the top 3 supports in the game, probably top 5 for sure. What Monarch provides to the team is just so amazing. She has a very good laning phase due to her setup of Chrysalis, or not the Chrysalis, the Crippling Pollen, sorry, the Q spell. She can disable someone for a teammate's follow-up. It has a mini stun and a silence. You can't TP away from her. She has good range for harassing. Her Chrysalis, which is the main reason you pick the hero, to be defensive, to babysit like a fragile agility carry. That's when you typically want to pick a Monarch, but arguably she's very good with any carry. She's good at protecting them and keeping them alive. Blocking spells or damage from spells is very, very powerful. She has extra wards, which give her vision control over other supports. So she's able to out-support other supports as long as she's able to keep her Nightcrawlers up. And her ultimate is similar to a Curse in the sense that she can debuff Sheepsticks and Hellflowers in late game, and she can do it in AoE, so it's even stronger than a Curse, because a Curse can only do it to one target, and he has to be in range, whereas Monarch can do it from very far away. So Monarch has an insanely powerful ultimate for being protective, and she has a very strong single target spell for being protective. So it's very hard to initiate against a Monarch because she can always keep people alive, and then you can counter initiate with the rest of your team. So Monarch for me is without a doubt an S tier hero. Definitely up there with the others in her category. Next is Prophet. Prophet is going to be a B tier support hero for me. Prophet is a pretty good laner. He now has a slow on his Q spell, his debilitate. Has mini stuns and a great single target heal that can also heal himself. Great when paired with heroes that can take advantage of the steroid at attack speed. So heroes with passives, heroes that can flash farm very quickly with attack speed. Prophet pairs very well with. For me, I can't give Prophet an A or S tier because I think the hero definitely kind of tapers off. It is very good in team fights. It's more of like a team fighting push style of hero, support hero. But I think in terms of like babysitters, there's other heroes that are a little bit stronger. But by all means, Prophet is not a bad hero. He could maybe be considered an A tier support hero, but I don't think he's necessarily better than some of the other heroes in his B tier. So definitely a strong laner, strong early game hero, strong at team fighting, but a lot of single target stuff until you use your ultimate. Sometimes it's hard to get multiple heroes in the ultimate. And due to having mini stuns, he can be kind of awkward sometimes with providing lockdown or setting up with another ally that has skill shots. But overall, a pretty solid support hero. Next on the list here is Rally, which I'm going to give him an A tier list. For me, Rally is a very powerful secondary support hero. Able to roam around the map early, set up kills. He can displace an ally to kind of fix their positioning, save them from sticky situations. Positioning is very, very key in HoN because HoN is very fast-paced. Being able to move your teammates out of danger and potentially stun people is always going to be very valuable. So there are many times or situations where he gets a lot of use as a support, and he can always be given a staff. He kind of just needs a portal key to set up his stun and his slam combo. Yeah, very, very solid secondary support option. Thus, I put him in the A tier. Fade, the next one, gonna be pretty much similar to Rally. Secondary support hero, very disruptive. You always know when Fade is in the game. He's constantly stalking you with his reflection, setting up kills with his allies, picking you off one by one. He has an amazing line stun, which if you're able to use it well, you can line stun, as I said, multiple heroes, which makes him a very valuable asset to have on your team. And very, very disruptive hero to play against. So definitely going to put him in the A tier list there. Next is Emerald Warden. Going to put him in the C tier list here. For me, Emerald Warden is not... there's a lot of counterplay when it comes to this hero. The best ability on Emerald Warden is the trap, and you can counterplay that with a hatchet, or even attacking the trap or using the hatchet as it's being placed, so before it even goes off. Both the silence and the wolves are disjointable if you're able to manage that. So there is so much counterplay when it comes to this hero. What makes this hero very useful is if he's able to get a staff and give the bird to an ally. So in the sense, he's mostly useful for his staff effect. Not really the strongest secondary support in comparison to a lot of the other ones in the B, A, and S tier categories. Just doesn't really offer as much as other heroes can. But he's definitely a good laner. That's kind of where his strength is, which is the laning phase. So yeah, I'm going to have to give him a C tier. I can't really place him higher, but is a hero that I find very fun to play. I like him myself, but definitely a little bit underwhelming in terms of power level. Next is going to be Cersei. Cersei for me is an A. Gets put in the A tier category. Not quite an S tier hero. Many people could probably consider him an S tier hero just because of his annoyance factor. This hero is pretty much good at every stage of the game other than laning phase. He's kind of a weak laner. That's what makes the hero not an S tier hero for me. The fact that if played correctly, you can control the enemy team's most farmed hero and become as powerful as them at the level 3 ultimate makes this hero very, very impactful. You always have to be aware of Cersei in the game because she just constantly spams illusions in your face of things, whether it's herself, her allies, or even her enemies. And you have to be like, hey, wait a minute, is that real? I don't want to blow my single target ultimate on an illusion or a clone. You always have to kind of keep that in the back of your mind. She's very, very disruptive. That's what she's good at. And boy, is it very difficult to play against sometimes. So for me, I have to give her an A tier list, A tier rank, sorry. She could maybe be considered S tier. If there was like a tier in between A and S, I'd probably put her there, but definitely a top tier support hero for sure. Pearl is the next one. I'm gonna put Pearl in the D tier. For me, Pearl has never really been like a high tier hero. I just feel like she's a very niche support hero. She's almost strictly defensive. She has the ability to dispel buffs or debuffs off enemies. So she's good in the sense that she can be situationally good removing certain spells and whatnot or abilities, but she's way too defensive. She doesn't really have too much offensive capability. There are certain games where like she's really good against like a lot of melee carries or heroes that like a Swiftblade spinning and TPing, or a Predator stone hiding and TPing out. Like she's really good against those kinds of heroes, just pushing them around and being annoying. But she's kind of one-dimensional, whereas the heroes in like A and S tier, they have more functions to them. They have more use cases. Pearl is just too limited, I feel like, and I also feel like some heroes just do kind of what she does better. So for me, she's kind of a D tier support hero. She definitely can be good sometimes, though. Next is going to be Master of Arms. I know a lot of people would probably say, well, Master of Arms, isn't he a carry? Yes and no. I think he for sure is a carry, but I think his best role at the moment is either main or secondary support. Not really main support, more so secondary support, because as a secondary support, you can kind of farm a little bit. The main strength of Master of Arms is his Acid Bomb. He's able to counter push waves, and he can kind of do it safely. He doesn't really need to put himself in danger too much. He can just throw down the Acid Bomb. It's really hard to push towers against him. He can set up stun with a really long range stun for his core heroes, which can be really good in laning phase. And then he can always get Staff of the Master, which is throughout HoN's history always been very, very powerful on him. So he can be a support that kind of transitions into a semi-damage dealer with the staff, which is really good. So thus he gets an A tier rank for me. But the main one of the main reasons, aside from the Acid Bomb, that he's an A tier hero is his Master's Call. So he has a global shield that he can put, kind of like an Ophelia ultimate, but obviously preventing damage. And that's very valuable. It's very valuable to be able to be anywhere on the map and be helping your allies out. Next is going to be Chipper on the list. So Chipper is going to be an S tier support hero. No doubt in my mind, Chipper is an S tier hero. This hero is very, very aggressive with his rockets. It's very hard to trade attacks and spells with the Chipper. He can hit you, rocket, do that over and over. So he's very aggressive. He can be a main support because he can stack jungle, get his Grave Locket done really fast, snowball a farming hero that takes out the jungle very early on in the game. Stuff that comes to mind is like things like Draconis and Forsaken Archer. I mean, the list goes on and on, but you guys get the picture. Very valuable as a main support. Very valuable as a secondary support as well, because he can do a lot of damage with his rockets and roam around the map very effectively. And not only that, while he's being aggressive, he has the focus buffer, which gives him or his allies a magic shield, and then he gets mana back to keep spamming rockets. So it's just, he's very, very strong. Another thing that makes him an S tier hero is that he can be given staff, which gives him an amazing staff effect, being able to slow enemies on the chainsaws through magic immunity. So they could have their shrunken head on, he places the saws on them, and then they're stuck there, they can't move. It's a really, really powerful effect in HoN, and a lot of the times we see core heroes staffing their support chipper, similar to a Glacious, because the staff is just very, very good. So Chipper has so many positive attributes. He's good pretty much throughout all stages of the game. He continues to be good in the mid and late game stages because of that staff effect. Otherwise, he would primarily be just good in the mid and early game. But yeah, Chipper is just a fantastic support hero. Without a doubt, an S tier S tier support hero. Next is going to be Scrap. For me, Scrap is a C tier hero. A lot of people might disagree with this one. For me, I think throughout HoN's history, Scrap has always been kind of lackluster. Now, that's not to say he's a bad hero. He definitely lanes very well. He has skills that deal a lot of damage. He's disruptive. He sends Vorax around the map. He can either push with the Vorax, or he can just be like, hey, you got to go to that part of the map, defend by Vorax. It's almost like a distraction more than anything. And it does scale into the game, so the longer the game goes, the stronger the Vorax gets. One of the main strengths of Scrap is that you can get gold pretty much in any game. You just send Vorax somewhere and you get gold, but the downside of that is you're taking gold as a support away from your cores. You're taking gold away from someone that could otherwise be there. And if you're not there with it, you're gaining a fraction of that gold instead of the main portion. So for me, I don't really like the concept of Scrap. I think there are just better heroes than him in the game. Thus, I have to give him a C rank. But again, he's not like a terrible hero by all means. He's not a B, A, or S tier hero that I would ever consider drafting in a tournament. So I have to give him a C rank here. Next for me is Golden Veil. I'm going to put Golden Veil in the D tier. There's a lot of reasons I feel like Golden Veil can't be ranked too high. He doesn't really have a lot of lane presence. He just sits on a tree. He doesn't really have too much power until he gets more levels in his stun or his daggers. And the main strength of this hero is the ultimate, being able to, if you get genocides with this hero, so if you kill the entire enemy team, your entire team gets bonus gold. That's when this hero starts to become really good. But if that's not happening, and again, in organized games, competitive games, I don't think Golden Veil is that good because it's really hard to team wipe people. That's when your team starts to snowball in GPM. And that stuff just doesn't really happen too often. So this hero is more of like strictly like a pub gimmicky hero. He's not really a good babysitter, so he's not really a good position 5 hero. He's more of a position 4 support. And he's just like disruptive, sits on a tree, gives you information where enemies are. But he's very easily countered. You can just buy an arcane bomb in the early to mid game stage on one hero, and poof, the hero comes down from his trees, he gets stunned, and you just kill him. He's a squishy intelligence hero that has to be sneaky for him to be effective. There's just too many downsides to the hero, I feel like. Very easy to counterplay. Doesn't provide enough for the team, in my opinion. But there are games where he can be disruptive if you're not able to counter him, and he can kind of snowball or take over games, but it doesn't really happen too often, and I just feel like he's kind of down the tier list. So next is going to be Martyr. And Martyr for me is kind of a similar story. He for me is a D. It has to be put in the D tier because I feel like he's not really that great of a babysitter. No, the strength of a Martyr is his laning phase. He's really disruptive. You almost never want to trade hits with him. But in that sense, it's almost predictable. You could just ignore the Martyr and not really fight him. And then his strength of dealing more damage when he's lower health is kind of irrelevant. You just have to play around what his strengths are. And all of a sudden, Martyr becomes kind of ineffective. His wings are very easy to deal with. You can buy Soul Trap and just Soul Trap the guy that has wings on him. And after you deal all the damage, they get put to 1 health. They just die. Unless Martyr has a Storm Spirit or he can ulti the guy right away, you almost always kill the target. You can purge the wings with Null Fireblade and Sand Scepter, so there's counter items to him in the game. And of course, the ultimate, which is Channel, doesn't instantly heal them to full. So as long as you save a silence or a stun for him in team fights, you can kind of just ignore him and keep an eye on what he's doing. And you kind of know what's going to happen with Martyr in the game. He's going to bait it scary to be very low and then turn it around and heal him up to full. So he's almost kind of gimmicky or predictable. I just feel like there are much better support heroes in the game than Martyr. But again, he's a really strong laning phase hero. That's when he really shines. If he's able to take advantage of that, he can be a nuisance, but definitely a low rank on my tier list. Next is going to be Succubus. I am going to place this hero in the E tier list. Now, before I talk about this hero, people are going to say to me, Succubus isn't a support hero, he's a mid hero. And, well, you might be right. That might be where we see him most commonly played as a mid hero. But when was honestly the last time you ever saw somebody play Succubus in a tournament? This hero is just so uncommon to see ran as a core hero. The hero has to, in order to be played as a core, he has to win his lane and dominate. And in competitive games, it's really hard for that to happen because there's team play involved, and this hero is just strictly good at one phase of the game, which is laning phase. So he never really makes it as a core hero in HoN, in my opinion. His skill set is kind of limited to being a support hero. He has disables, and as a support hero, he's just way too lackluster. He doesn't deal hardly any damage. His disables, although they are disruptive, they can be counterplayed. His ultimate is channeling, so he can be interrupted by any silence or stun in the game, which in competitive games, almost every single hero is going to have a stun or a silence. He doesn't, as I said, he doesn't deal hardly any damage. He can't babysit as a position 5. As a position 4, he doesn't have a big enough mana pool to use his abilities repeatedly. The sleep and the heartache, which are the main reasons you play the hero, just cost too much mana to constantly use. So as a support, you can't really spam your skills. You can't farm because the hero has no farming mechanic. So the hero deals no damage, can't farm, can't disable very effectively because there's so much counterplay. You can just wake up the guy he sleeps, or you can stun him or silence him when he ultimates somebody. For me, this hero is an E tier hero, unfortunately. He's kind of niched into that solo mid role, which again, he's just, although he can be effective in 1v1 scenarios, I don't consider him a mid hero. I consider him a support hero, and he doesn't do that very well. Next on the list is going to be Slither. I would put Slither in the the C tier rank. And the reason for that is because he just doesn't do enough in terms of this is not a position 5 support hero. This is a position 4 support hero. He just doesn't do a whole lot in terms of like he's good in laning phase. He doesn't have a stun. He only has slows. He has DOTs, which can be which can either be debuffed or you can deny people if they're gonna die. So one of the biggest drawbacks of Slither is if he puts toxicity or poison spray on you, you can just deny your teammate and then they get no gold. They spend all their resources, they don't even get a kill. It's very easy to deny Slither kills. If they don't have toxicity on, you can just heal up the DOT. You can buy items, magic armor, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, you could argue that for any hero, but the hero in terms of power level, for me as a support, he just doesn't quite make it to the B or higher tier. He needs, I think, Staff of the Master to be really effective. That's when his ultimate becomes lethal damage. Before that, it's non-lethal. So a lot of the times you can just survive from Slither because the toxicity, you just wait for the toxicity to run out. The poison burst or whatever the ultimate's called, it does deal good damage, but it's also kind of hard to land that on several targets. It's almost like you need a portal key to kind of get in there, but it's a very awkward support hero. There's just better heroes in the game, to be honest. And unfortunately, that's Slither's best role as a support. I don't really feel like he's a very good carry or solo laner, although he can be played in a solo role for sure. He's mostly categorized as a support hero. Next, we have Whichlayer. And Whichlayer, for me, is a B tier support hero. Whichlayer is above average. The main reasons why he is not an A or S tier hero is he does not have a very good laning phase. Early game, his disables aren't that strong. He's very squishy, easy to kill, kind of immobile support. He does have great disables though, so he is a valuable asset to have on the team after laning phase for sure. He has a stun, a sheep, and an ultimate that deals a ton of damage. All this hero really needs is a portal key, and he becomes really, really impactful. The problem is getting to the portal key. He can't really farm too well. And as I said, he generally has a pretty weak laning phase, so he's kind of hard to get out of early game with. But if you're able to get out of early game, this hero is amazing. Once he gets a portal key, he becomes like an A to S tier support hero easily. Very, very valuable to have a PK sheep hero on your team. Coupling that with the stun and the burst that he provides from the ultimate, he's great at locking down single targets. Also good if he can get given staff to have superior silver bullet, but we don't see that really too often, so it's kind of hard to gauge that, but it is a very strong effect. For me, he definitely is in the upper half of the tier list, but I have to put him at B based on how weak his early game is, but definitely a very, very disruptive support hero. Next on the tier list is going to be Engineer, which for me is an S tier support hero. This hero is very, very valuable, mostly as a secondary support hero, where he's paired with an initiator with a stun. He has great burst damage in laning phase with his keg and his mine, great disruption support with the turret and the ultimate. The ultimate is one of the big reasons why he's a great support hero. The energy field's able to silence enemies that walk through it and perplex their inventory. They can't use shrunken heads and items and whatnot. That on top of being able to place mine traps throughout all stages of the game, very, very disruptive support hero. Able to get solo kills with the mine traps. Able to displace enemies with the the keg and the turret. Is just so valuable. He can be played as a position 5, but it's not really ideal. Definitely would kind of gear him toward that secondary support role, but just an amazing support. All of his abilities are great. Great throughout all stages of the game. Have to give him an S tier rank. Next is going to be Behemoth, which for me is a B tier support hero. Typically we see Behemoth as like an offlane or suicide hero, but when you think about it, this hero, he doesn't contest the lane. He just fissures the creeps, kind of hugs his tower. Every once in a while gets a creep with fissure. He isn't really a core hero that scales into the game. We typically just see him get a portal key and that's it. Thus, I kind of label him as a support, where his best role really kind of shines. He's more of like a roamer, sets up kills with his fissure, runs around the map, kind of a disruptive initiator. And all he really needs is that PK just to get the shockwave initiation, lock people down. He's just utility for the team. Stun people, hold them down, deal some decent bursts, and let your teammates do the rest. And he's fairly good at that. He's a very, very good roamer, very disruptive hero. Very, very solid to have on your team in more or less any game. And he kind of enables your other heroes in your team. So I can't really give him an A or an S tier rank because he isn't quite at that power level, but definitely a good hero. Definitely belongs in the upper half. I think he belongs in the B category. Next is going to be Myrmidon. Myrmidon for me is a C tier support hero. So not really a good position 5 hero. Doesn't have range, doesn't have reliable spells. All of his spells are more or less skill shots, but the Magic Carp is pretty consistent damage. You're able to kind of use that frequently. It's not the longest cooldown, but the Windfield does require him to be paired with somebody to easily land it. Again, his low range, he's not really a good babysitter. He's more geared toward a position 4 role where he can't really farm that well. He kind of needs to be given staff to be an effective hero where he can kind of transition into more of a core hero. So he kind of needs to be paired with something. I feel like there's just other heroes in the game that do what he does better. I typically don't really think about drafting this hero as a drafter myself. Definitely not a bad hero, but I think there are just better heroes for his role, and he kind of requires a little bit too much. So there are some downsides to him. There are ways to counterplay against him. You can disjoint the fish and avoid weed fields. You're not stunned initially, so there's a lot of counterplay to the hero, but he's not bad by all means. Definitely gonna throw him in the C rank there. Geomancer, next on our list, gonna give him a B rank. I think some people would probably rank this hero higher than me. For me personally, I feel like he's kind of fallen off on the competitive scene. He's kind of tapered down. His what's that spell called? The Geostalk, I believe. The spell where he goes invis and hunts people down. It's kind of unreliable. Before it got reworked, it used to be really, really broken, and it just gave way too much information. And this hero had like longer range and longer, I don't know if he had more nuke power or something, but he doesn't deal a whole lot of damage reliably now. He does have lots of skill shots. He kind of needs to be paired with something that does a little bit of extra damage. He's more of a disruptive ganking support, secondary support, not really a good position 5, of course. But for me, he's kind of unreliable, kind of needs to be geared towards gank lineups. So he's kind of situational in comparison to other heroes. But he's definitely a good laning phase hero. Very disruptive, very good at roaming around because he's very mobile with his dig. As well as being a ranged hero, so he can harass. So he's definitely a good hero, definitely belongs in the upper half. But for me, he falls a little bit short, and I rank him in the B rank. It might be a little bit lower than some other people would rank him, but that's just how I feel about the hero. Getting down to the end here, we have a couple more heroes left. The next one going to be Rampage. So Rampage for me is going to be an A tier hero. I do consider Rampage to be more of a support. I label him in that position 4 roaming support kind of category where he's just very disruptive, sets up ganks in the early laning phase stages. Doesn't really need any farm, just needs to charge people and be annoying. He needs like boots and maybe some either like a Lex Talionis or something that gives him HP to kind of run into people and be annoying. His ultimate is fairly decent. He can lock one guy down, displace them, which again I've talked about how displacing enemies in HoN, changing their movement is their positioning is very impactful. Being able to displace somebody is just so valuable. But he can only do it to one guy, of course. But it is pretty strong. It's just so mobile, so hard to kind of gauge where he's going to be sometimes. And you kind of always have to be aware of where the Rampage is and kind of think like a step or two ahead of him to be kind of prepared. So just such a nuisance. I have to put him in the A tier here. Next is going to be Magmus. Magmus for me is an S tier hero. So I feel like Magmus throughout HoN's entire history, I'm talking from the very beginning, day 1 when Magmus was a hero, this hero has always been super strong. He for me has the best line stun in the game. He's so good on any team. You can play this hero in almost any role other than maybe carry. You could play him as a mid hero, an offlane hero. He can be a support hero, which obviously this is a support tier list. This is where I feel like is his best role, because generally speaking, he only really needs a portal key and he does his job. He needs to position and then line stun, and he doesn't really do a whole lot of damage. It's really hard to get Eruption to land on multiple heroes. When it does, it's fantastic, but it doesn't happen all that often. So he's very valuable just for his stun. He's able to stun anybody he catches in his Lava Surge line. So It's an instant stun. He can disjoint with both his Steam Bath and his stun. He's just so slippery, so disruptive, so good at locking people down. He can do it, get out, do it again. I would love to have Magmus in my team almost any single game, and that's why, for me, I give him an S tier rank. And last but not least is Deadwood. Deadwood, for me, is another hero that I think a lot of people would probably disagree with me on, but that's okay. Because I consider Deadwood similar to like a Behemoth. He is, for me, a support hero. Although you can play him in mid and off lane. Basically, the way the hero functions is he gets his core item, which is usually a PK, and he just hunts the carry. He just gets a PK, hunts the carry. He kind of stops farming, and that's mostly due to him just not being able to farm very well. He kind of has no way to wave clear and flash farm and be like a core hero. So he's kind of just getting that PK and then sitting in trees on the map, waiting for kills, hunting core heroes, solo killing, or killing with teammates. And he basically functions like a support. He, in my opinion, his best role is secondary support, where he can just roam around the map, set up kills with Rotten Grass, and obviously do his thing. So for me, I will put him in the support tier list, and that's where I think his best role shines. For me, I think he's a B tier support hero. He is definitely a very good hero in HoN. There are plenty of ways to counterplay him though. So I feel like he cannot be an A or S tier support hero, but definitely very, very situationally very good. He's good against strength carries and strength core heroes where he can do lots of damage to them with his Willowmaker. So yeah, whenever you're against a Deadwood, if you're vulnerable to him, you always have to be aware of where he is on the map. So that is going to be a full tier list here for every hero that I consider to be their best role to be support in HoN. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's around 40 heroes on this list. So we got a huge chunk of the hero pool here on this tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed this HoN hero tier list for support. And I'm going to be interested to see what you guys say in the comments. Please, again, don't do any troll comments about, oh, this hero can be played this way. I know that's the case. This is strictly talking about their best and most optimal role. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. And again, as I said, let me know what you think in the comments below and stay tuned for the next one.